Manjula, who's going to take us on this journey. Manjula is excellent. She's a business psychologist. She used to sit as a panelist for the JAC, the Judicial Appointments Commission, but that's just one aspect of what she used to do, and now she helps people become judges or part-time, but she also helps business leaders. And so as a psychologist, she's really interesting about some of the skill set that we should all be thinking about and how to apply it. So she's done a fantastic presentation for us. So I'm going to just hand over to you, Manjula. And she's put makeup on, she's brushed her hair. Check this out, she's in her office. There's no kind of, so let's head over and give Manjula the cut. Oh, Manjula, if you speak and then you're in charge.
Hi, Sally. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So, welcome, and welcome to everyone, regardless of whether you're a student. Don't feel like you're an imposter. You're allowed, because I'm sure you'll still get something out of it as well. So I can see Sharon. Oh, my goodness, what have I done? No worries. I'm sure you'll get some nuggets out of today's session. And we are only a small group, so feel free to use the chat, and Sally will be able to feed me questions maybe partway through as well. Okay. So when Sally asked me to do a presentation, Lunch and Learn, and I've been attending a few as well, so I didn't hesitate at all. So what I'd like to do in the next half hour or so is answer this question for yourself. Are you a competent contender, whatever stage of your career you're at? But obviously, if you are eligible to apply, that means you'll have at least 5 years post-qualification experience. That's 5 years PQE. That isn't the full story though, just because it's advertised as open for anyone who's got 5 years plus. Quality is not the same as quantity. It depends on the type of experience you have and how relevant that is to the role you're applying for. So it's a case of the level of experience you have. You can have amazing breadth and depth of experience in a couple of years and have rubbish depth and breadth in 10, 20 years of experience. So it's got to be the relevant and right type of experience. And to start the process, I'm going to say first step, and relevant to you students as well, if you've got less experience, is to reflect. And for those of you who started the journey, it is a really good idea to reflect regularly and make notes of your experience, your knowledge. Keep it in one place. I call that place a brag file. For those of you who are a little more senior and more experienced, you're going to have to rely on that memory, which is harder to do. So great time to start this brag file is now. If you've got experience that's valuable, that you think is relevant and transferable, skills, knowledge, etc., then you're going to have to rely on your memory to recall some of the more valuable experiences in life, the lessons you've learned. So reflection is really important, and it's not about any old thing that you remember. It's the significant, what I call Oscar moments, significant achievements. So, it's a really good practice to get into from day one. Think maybe weekly, fortnightly, have a meeting with yourself. Set up a recurring Outlook appointment with yourself, I'd suggest, and think about, what did I learn this week that is of value? What am I proud of having achieved this week, this fortnight? Get it down on paper. The JAC for judicial appointments will want a lot of information in detail. So the fresher it is in your memory, the better when you get it down. A little more about how you write that down, but for the moment, just want to make the point that it's your significant achievements, not run-of-the-mill everyday stuff. What stands out as being exceptional, as novel, as different? Because all along, as to be a competent contender and a competent candidate, you need to interest your panel members, whoever is assessing you. So the things that they will recall about you as a candidate will make you shine as being different from the other applicants. And you want to stand out, whether you've got imposter syndrome or not, because we've talked about that a fair bit in terms of lunch and learns here. And women on the whole will have imposter syndrome more frequently than men will. So for example, when it comes to applying for a job, women tend to be more conscious about meeting all of the criteria or close as. So you'll find women won't bother applying unless they're meeting competent to apply, eligible to apply, when they meet maybe 60% of the requirements. So set aside your imposter syndrome, and if you meet the qualification criteria as well. Sally is, are you okay, Sally? I'm just checking. I can't hear you, so I'm not sure if there's a problem.
No, just carry on.
Okay. So lose that imposter syndrome, big part of making that journey go in the right direction. And think about your significant achievements. And part of that is only going to be achieved if you've got what I call a growth mindset. That is essential if you're going to become a judge, because you're always growing as a leader. And if you perceive that failure is a limit to what you bring to the table, then that's not going to serve you well in life generally. But if you've got a growth mindset, that means you're probably going to have these sort of conversations with yourselves, like, I can learn anything I want to. And I truly believe that if I put my mind to something, it's obviously got to be something I'm keen to, address, and I'm motivated by it. And it's, I see the value add that I would get from doing that. But I am not the finished deal. I am going to keep on growing until, I drop, basically. And your effort and your attitudes will determine your abilities, not what your genes gave you or what your mum and dad gave you and inherited, or what your schooling gave you. You've really got to think the sky is the limit. Actually, it's you, and you set that limit. So think growth mindset, not fixed. This is the finished article. No, it isn't. And if you think it is, then you shouldn't be going down this path. So that's really important in terms of judicial applications are rarely successful the first time round. And so you need to have that growth mindset and learn from that experience going forward. What can I therefore change? What gaps was I made aware of in my last application or from feedback from others? So if you're struggling with that imposter syndrome and don't recognize the special qualities you bring to the table, then you need to think about asking somebody else for some impartial feedback. Obviously, people you trust that will know as well, but you need to maybe ask them this question: when was I at the top of my game? Because often they will bring to light some examples of your achievements that perhaps you have put aside and forgotten about. So do solicit that feedback. It's really important that you get feedback from others as well as what you recall. So reflection needs to be then followed by step 2, which is research. And this will mean finding out about the role that you're applying for and going out there and networking with peers, with individuals who are in the know. So who in your network is already perhaps a judge, or who can you gain access to via things like platforms like LinkedIn. And if you join groups, you will be amazed at how that can take you places that you thought you couldn't access, people you couldn't access, because as soon as you join LinkedIn groups that are related to judicial appointments or quasi-judicial appointments, then you will start talking to people that are in that area. And by that, I mean, you can actually gain direct access to individuals if you're in that same group as another judge, perhaps. So get to, you know, keep a little note of people you meet, and you never know, they may be second, third connections, as well as think about the groups that they're involved in to gain access and have conversations, career conversations. It's not a case of asking, can I have a job? But start researching, what does a tribunal judge do? What about if I thought about a part-time role, which is, you know, a deputy district judge perhaps? What do they do? Really start exploring deeply, is this the right move for me? Are the kind of activities, are the hours suitable? Why do I really want to go down this route? So until that question is answered, why bother making an application? If it's not right for you, you're wasting your time. So research heavily, sign up for a JAC account, go to meet the judges events where you can maybe speak to them after they've done their presentation, or a Q&A session. The Law Society and the Judicial Appointments Commission hold events regularly, and they're doing more and more online as well, because I'm actually delivering my course that I deliver at the Law Society online now as well, in its totality. So, you know, COVID has just forced people to use different platforms rather than the usual face-to-face. Start networking, find out everything you can, loads of profiles of different judges and what they do and how they got there. And actually on Lunch and Learn, we've been having lots of experiences shared about how they made it to the top as well, haven't we, Sally? So that's really, you know, the information's out there. It's up to you to research and find out more. Evidence is what it's all about. You know, what you say is what you say on the tin. The reality is what the JAC want to find out. And that applies to these areas. Is the knowledge you have actually accurate, correct, bona fide? Are the skills there? And what are the behaviors that are required to become a successful judge? And those behaviors, the language used by the Judicial Appointments Commission is competencies, hence why my session title is Competent Contender. So competencies I define, this is not a universally accepted definition, but my definition for competencies, well, I didn't devise it, but this is the one I like. Competencies are the behaviors that candidates and employees, because remember, competencies are used in lots of organizations to identify the right behaviors. So are the behaviors that candidates and employees must have already or have the potential to acquire? Back to that growth mindset. Are they showing potential to acquire these behaviors that they can input into a situation in order to achieve high levels of performance? Not competent, as the name implies. Every employer wants people who add value. They want the icing on the cake. So they want high levels of performance. And the reason for that is any organization is going to profit from high performers because you need fewer of them, because they're more productive, because they achieve a lot of bang for their buck, if you like. And let's face it, judicial appointments, in comparison to some positions as partner in firms, etc., don't pay that amazingly well. So don't think just because the hours might be good for an employee in the judiciary, as in a part-time judge or a salary judge, doesn't mean that they don't expect you to be productive and effective. They want a lot of bang for their bucks. The important thing from this definition of competencies is that in the judicial appointments process, how you behave in particular situations is just as important as what you did. Because there's an awful lot of you out there, solicitors, barristers, lawyers, that are duplicating what you do. So how do you make yourself stand out? We find out about your approach to different things, and that is what dictates behavior. People will have different approaches. Sharon will have a different approach to a problem as Bushra will. Yeah, so it's how you approach something is just as important as what you did and the outcome you achieve. Obviously, I asked you to focus on your significant achievements. So think the song that goes, "It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it," because that's what gets results. Okay, and type in your chat box if you know who sang that and the band. Yeah, there were two actually. There's a hint. Because on assessment day, the evidence comes out in different types of exercises, like a situational judgment, which is asking you not what you did in the past, which is what your application is all about, but what you might do in the future given these circumstances A, B, C. That's very much future focused, the situational judgment. It's wanting to explore your approach, which hasn't happened yet because you've not been a judge before. But given a scenario, how would you approach it? The CB interview, the CB stands for competency-based interview. And that is all about, just put the arrow in. So this CB is competency-based interview. That is all about what you did in the past. So the situational judgment is what you will do in the future. Competency-based is what you did in the past. And then the real play, it's advertised as the role play, but I call it a real play because it is a realistic scenario that you are put in, physically put in, to have to then be that judge that you've applied to be. Yeah, so you've applied for a tribunal position, you will be faced with a tribunal situation or scenario that you will be the tribunal judge in. The minute you walk in the door, that door, you come in, you're not dressed up as a judge. We're not talking role play as in dressing up time. We're talking actually dealing with a situation, a real live situation that is based on stuff that's happened in the past, that we will be watching as a panel of assessors, watching your behaviors and making a note. We won't be part of the situation at all. You will be given a set amount of time, half an hour, 40 minutes, to sort something out that a real judge does. So the evidence collected and assessed prior is all about seeing you on the day actually doing the job and making that decision about whether you show the potential to do this job well. And the behaviors we're looking at are these 5 core behaviors. We're talking about your judgment. Obviously, judges need to have sound judgment. This is all about your integrity, making decisions, being confident about making those decisions under challenging circumstances. So there is a place on the website that is labeled as prompts, P-R-O-M-P-T-S, that give you an idea of the kind of examples under each of these behaviors that prompt you to explore your knowledge, your experience, etc. Then, of course, knowledge is an important factor in selection. It's all about, one, what knowledge you currently bring to the table, i.e. your expertise area. But also, as I said, this growth mindset is coming back to bite you again and again. It's what have you learned at a pace when you didn't know the law? Are you able to still apply the principles to new law? Because that's what a judge does continuously. Yes, they have advisors there that they can draw upon when they don't have the knowledge, and then they still have to make a decision. The middle competency is all about information. Can you assimilate large quantities of complex information and clarify that information so that it becomes usable and accessible to others that are involved in that hearing, that decision. So this is where the quality versus quantity, you know, the quality of the complexity, as in the quality of the information that you're handling, is going to be really important. If it's run-of-the-mill stuff, then it's not the appropriate type of information that you need to be sharing about this behavior. So you need to have lots of examples up your sleeve that are about complex situations. Perhaps there were different streams of information coming in and you had to sort out things like a skeleton or a timeline. So we need to evidence that to have a chance in this process. This picture shows the fair trade sticker. And that is because this fourth competencies is about working with others and communication. Whilst there isn't anything specifically about equality, this is a lot about diversity and you being adaptable in terms of communicating and generally interacting with others, because a judge in certainly United Kingdom overall, and I know there was somebody there from Edinburgh, Scottish, I do work with the judicial appointments in Scotland as well, and their competencies are slightly different, but there's huge overlap. The technical aspect of being a sheriff is very different to being a judge in England and Wales. However, the behaviours are pretty much the same. So this is about evidencing that you can adapt your style and approach to the population of England, Wales, Scotland, wherever that may be that you're applying, and all walks of life, all social areas, levels, and be really quite aware of the diversity within the population, because those are daily, certainly as entry-level positions like DDJ and tribunal, you will deal with people who aren't represented, as in litigants in person. That's becoming more and more common. So you need to evidence that you have been exposed to a variety of individuals and that you can empathize with them, not sympathize, empathize with their circumstances so that you can execute the law fairly. And then the final competency is about your efficiency. Remember I talked about bang for bucks? Well, you need to be efficient the way you work. How do you manage your efficiency in being productive? And that lady said, I think it was Sean, about your children being away and how much more productive you are. So day to day, how do you ensure that you are as productive as you can be? And that could be through, tools and techniques, maybe apps, even a basic reminder system so that you don't miss deadlines and goals, because the JAC want evidence that you can get through a lot of stuff in spite of emergencies, in spite of juggling things, not miss deadlines and still achieve your goals to a high standard. So this competency on paper very much is about how do you cope with an already busy schedule, yet you suddenly have something urgent come in that makes you have to delegate stuff, reprioritize stuff, perhaps use technology to harness technology to make yourself more efficient, perhaps use systems or edit or revise systems so that things are more efficient and streamlined. Perhaps you think, okay, it's better to do all my phone calls in the afternoon. I mean, I certainly am sharpest in the morning, so I'll do an awful lot of the thinking time there and block out my calendar for that, etc. And also, recharging comes into this, because we don't want in the judiciary people who burn out because they work too hard, because they're not in touch with when their system is telling them, I've had enough. How do they manage themselves to be productive in the long run, not just in the short run. So those are the 5 competencies and areas, and you need to align these with the job description. That's what JD stands for, that is published for each vacancy, and the competency framework, which is the information that the JAC publish online. And if your area of operation is way, way different, like perhaps you know the law, but you're lecturing, you're going to have to get some experience of actually executing the law rather than just showing you can teach it or train on it. And that may well mean you need to think about shadowing as a first port of call. Have you done some shadowing to really, as part of your research, to really get grips with, get to grips with what the role entails? And maybe that brings up, gaps like maybe you need to apply for a quasi-judicial role, and I'll review some of those at the very end. But the definitions for these competencies are standard. They apply to every single position you apply for. Exercising judgment, I've got the main definition is below that. For each vacancy though, what does differ is the detail underneath it. So the bullets that appear for exercising judgment, they won't vary a huge amount between, say, DDJ and tribunal, but the way a tribunal operates is different to the way a courtroom environment that a DDJ works in or a DJ works in operates is very different. So it may well be that some of the working and communicating with others, competency details, the bullets may vary a little. Equally with managing work efficiently, I've noticed that some of them are slightly different. So your role pay will be different, but so will the evidence. You'll have to think about tailoring your evidence to the job description and the specific competency information. And don't think you have to wait until the job is actually advertised. In terms of becoming a competent contender means starting early. So if you've got your eye on something, like I spoke to someone this morning about a recorder position, then don't wait until those competencies are advertised. Go to the JAC website and check out what they publicized last time, because it won't vary very much. The recorder role was advertised maybe a year ago or just over, so it's not going to vary very much at all. I would say beware if it was like 5 years ago, things could have changed, but certainly a year or two ago, it's a good place to start and start thinking about getting that brag file of all your competencies in one place. So you've got the material, you're not pressurizing yourself to generate that 2 weeks before the closing date, because you generally don't have an awful long time to compile those competencies. So do it ahead of time. So I'm going to suggest a preparation formula. Think about a block of Post-its. Get a block of Post-its as a first start. And Sharon and any other students equally, this is going to be a really good strategy for whatever position you're applying for. Think, when was I at the top of my game? And just note a sentence, nothing significant, just a little sentence of when was I at the top of my game? What was I doing? If it was a headline, what would that one block of Post-it pads, the first pad, what would that say? So give it a title that reminds you of that occasion. And just keep going until you go dry. Every single Post-it pad needs to have a different title that takes you to a place where you were hot, you were great, you were achieving things, people were patting you on the back, you were even patting yourself on the back. Yeah, when did you do a great job? Keep going. And then when you've stopped, as I say, give it a title, because this is your material. And then whatever competency framework that organization is using, here I've got a mind map for the JAC competency framework. You want to map it out. You want to post all your Post-its to the right space. Was that occasion that you were on fire about showing amazing judgment? Was it about you learning something that made you an expert in that area, or where you showed that you can learn something very quickly and apply it in a different area, totally different to where you operate? And you're going to start posting them, and don't stop necessarily at achievement 1 and 2. You're just going to start sticking them up. I suggest you do this on a big chart, a flip chart, or if you've got a whiteboard that's a decent size, you should be just keeping on doing that, because this is the material that will help you shine at whatever job you're going for. And you know, you should have that aspiration now. What's the next move I'm going to make? Why not look at the job description? Why not look at the person specification? How can I evidence this? Because this is what you're doing in any selection process. Constantly reassuring your panel that I did this in the past, so I don't see why I can't do it again with your company or your organization. I've got the evidence that, you know, I can tell you about the time when. So do this for whatever vacancy you're applying for, and build that picture up until you're ready to start putting pen to paper. Because at the JAC, what they do is they start with this application where you write it down in a particular way. Then they test your ability, or should I say your knowledge. And right now it's the combined qualifying test for the Deputy District Judge and the tribunal positions. They'd had an exam online, and you had to show that you knew your law, because then just in a few days' time, on the 9th of July, I think, they're being asked, those people who passed, if you like, the qualifying test, who met the cut, to do a scenario again online. And if they then pass eligibility criteria, they will be invited to an assessment day. It's actually assessment half day. And believe it or not, it's quite straightforward for judges. I do assessment days for directors and other positions, even head teachers, that are much more grueling and protracted than the JAC position. And what they're doing in an assessment day is looking at different sources of evidence that go along the x-axis here in my picture frame. And they're comparing the evidence for all of those behaviors or competencies. So you can do this for whatever job you're going for. Whatever's advertised as the behaviors or the competencies, put them on the y-axis. Evidence source, how are they going to measure those behaviors? This is what this matrix is doing, because ultimately in your self-assessment or your application, they'll look at your judgment, how you made decisions. Did you make good decisions? Showing your integrity and values as well. And you know, they'll go across here for judgment and say, oh, what did your referees say about you, about your judgment, if those are sought? And if we give you an interview and a situational judgment, how did you do on that front? But they'll also look at every source in the real play. Did you show good judgment? And then did you show that you could, even though you don't operate in this area of the law, that you can apply that law in a real situation? Did you clarify and, you know, assimilate that information that was given to you before your role play? Did you communicate well with the litigants in person, which is what we were expecting you to do, and in the way we were expecting you to do it? And did you finish on time? Did you manage parties effectively so that they gave full information, that they felt justice was done and it was actually done? You know, did they perceive that they had a fair hearing even if you ruled against them? So this is the picture we are building, this assessment matrix, and in all of those boxes, you will have a score of some sort, because we are measuring behavior in these four different contexts. That's what an assessment day does. It looks at you holistically, not just one angle, not just your self-assessment and application and make a decision. It'll be holistic decision. So if you can imagine where my arrow is spinning right now, that's where we get the final assessment of you as a candidate. Are we going to give you what grade? Is it an A, B, C, D, E? Because ultimately, the behavior is assessed in a particular way. I hinted at it before, is the SAW structure. SAW is an acronym. The S in SAW stands for situation. You need to give a bit of context to the listener, i.e. the 3 panel members. What was your circumstance? Go back to your post-it block. What title are we talking about? Okay, so I'm not a legal person, and nor is the chair. It's only the judge that is. So make it jargon-free and understandable to a lay person. Just give a bit of background and context of your situation. So on this stage that has no props, you need to put some background in that. Then you need to think, what were my objectives in that situation? What did I need to achieve? Now, the JAC use a simple SAW. I've elaborated and edited it a little bit and added another O, which stands for obstacle, because you want to talk about stories and situations where you were faced with a challenge. Because until you can talk about how you overcame that challenge, what's going to happen? You're not going to tell a story that really engages the listener or the reader. And then you want to go on to what were my actions? You are the actor in this story. You are the primary lead lady. So it needs to be all about me. So you're going to write and speak as in using the personal pronoun I. If you start talking about we, then I don't know who did what. And I'm certainly not going to assume you did it all. So make sure you use the personal pronoun I. And then that is the meat in this example. We want to hear all about you and your approach. So you're going to explain what you did, why you did it that way, how you did it. Because that's going to tell me how you did it differently to somebody else. And then you're going to end with the result or the outcome. And, you know, it's not all about it went well. I succeeded. We want to hear things that sell you. So what difference did you make? What was it like before versus when you actually had this specific outcome? I want to know what value you added. So give me some contrast between before and after. Also think numbers speak louder than words. So whatever complaint rate you had previously versus you introduce a different system or way of working, and 3 years later, complaints have gone down by X%. How did you make that happen? That's what I wanted to hear in the action, and then in the result, this is what the outcome was. And sometimes reflection helps. That's my second edit on SAW. So we're squaring O and we're squaring R. It's R squared, and reflection is all about what did I learn from that occasion. Given my time around again, what would I change? What would I do differently? Because that reflection is all about continuous improvement. We don't want you sitting on your laurels and thinking, oh, that worked well. We want you to keep on thinking, how can I make it even better? Sometimes it's helpful, not often, but sometimes it's helpful to actually talk about how you fell flat on your face, because sometimes that actually helps in terms of evidencing that reflection. So situation, objective and obstacle, action and result, and possibly reflection. That's the format you need to write your key scenarios in. So remember that, but post-it block, every single example needs to follow that format. And it works. your story is a lot clearer. Your achievement is sold a lot stronger with greater impact if you follow this format. So in terms of preparing for the journey, there are quasi-judicial appointments that you can apply for via this public appointments website. And also I would suggest for preparation for some of the entry-level positions, the Equal Treatment Bench book, given the working with others and litigants in person, very worthwhile looking at that. And certainly CPR rules will probably be relevant as well. So again, things that you can be doing before vacancies come up. But there are quasi-judicial appointments in all kinds of areas, in healthcare, accounting, I've got there, medical positions like tribunals with the GMC, the midwifery council, I think it is. I work also with the police as an ethics panel member, as my voluntary position, but you can also, I actually got that because I had applied for the Police Appeals Tribunal, and they usually have a legal member as well as a lay member, which is what I had applied for. So set up an account at the JAC, it's judicial appointments, and oops, I've forgotten to write the rest of that slide, Sally. Set up an account and get your basics up online straight away is what I would suggest. And in terms of, depending on where you are at the start of the journey, you can continue the journey, but in terms of online, I've got a program starting soon as well in terms of making some changes. I deliver it in over a number of weeks, but the judicial appointments training I do at the Law Society is another option. During COVID, this has worked really well for individuals because it's a slower session, covers things in a lot more detail and depth on a regular evening. And yeah, I do one-to-one as well. So I think I'll stop there with any questions, Sally.
Yeah. Well, firstly, let's, if you stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
And then we can see everyone again. Yeah, there aren't that many of us on here today, so we can see each other. So let's clap for Manjula, as we normally do on this.
Thank you.
That was fantastic, particularly from people who think about all these things but don't actually do anything, or perhaps they've tried and they haven't.